The wind cut across the training grounds of Fort Bragg, carrying the faint echo of gunfire from the range. Soldiers in uniform lined up, their laughter sharp and echoing as a small figure stepped onto the gravel. She didn't look like she belonged. She was barely 15, dressed in simple jeans and a worn-out jacket, her boots too big for her feet. The men chuckled, exchanging whispers as their commander, Colonel Richardson, folded his arms and grinned. "Where's this little girl's? Mom?" the colonel said loudly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is a military base, not a daycare." The laughter swelled around her. Emily Carter didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that words could wound worse than bullets, but only if she let them. Her father, a soldier who had fallen in Afghanistan, had taught her that strength wasn't always in the body. Sometimes it lived in silence, patience, and the courage to keep standing when the world tried to push you down. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from. And if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. She kept her eyes forward, not on the men who mocked her, but on the rifle range behind them. Targets stood in neat rows, stretching farther than most eyes could see. Her father used to take her to practice in secret, handing her his old sniper rifle when no one was watching. He would kneel behind her, steadying her shoulders, whispering, "Breathe, Emily. Slow the world down. Trust the shot." Those words were etched into her memory. Colonel Richardson smirked as she stepped toward the weapon rack. "You want to try, little girl? Be my guest. Let's see what happens when the toy breaks in your hands." She ignored the sting in his words. Her fingers brushed across polished metal until they found the M110 sniper rifle, the very model her father had used. The weapon was heavy, but to her it felt like coming home. She lifted it with surprising steadiness, each motion clean and precise. Soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Richardson laughed. "Fine. Targets at 800 meters. She won't even see them, let alone hit them." The first shot rang out. The crack split the air, and the target snapped back with a neat hole through its center. Silence fell. The soldiers leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Another shot. Bullseye. Then another. The line of laughter faded into a thick, tense silence. Richardson's grin faltered. He waved over two men standing off to the side, their names whispered in every corridor of military legend: Marcus Luttrell, survivor of Operation Red Wings, and Chris Kyle, the American sniper whose kills had rewritten records. Both approached, with careful interest, watching Emily work. "She's got control," Luttrell muttered. Kyle nodded slowly. Not just control, instinct. But Richardson's pride couldn't bend. "Luck," he barked. "She's a child playing soldier." He ordered a new challenge: moving targets, shifting wind, shots at nearly a kilometer. Emily adjusted without hesitation, her body low, her breathing steady. One by one, she sent rounds downrange, and one by one, the targets fell. The men who had once laughed now stood still, their admiration too reluctant to voice. Chris Kyle stepped forward. "Colonel, with respect, that's not luck." Before the colonel could reply, alarms blared across the base. A radio crackled. An Allied patrol had been pinned down by enemy forces in the valley east of their position. Snipers had the unit locked in place, and drone support couldn't get through. Richardson froze. They needed precision fire, and fast. His men scrambled, but hesitation crept into every movement. Emily's voice cut through. "I can do it!" The colonel whipped around. "Absolutely not!" Luttrell's hand rested on his shoulder. "Sir, I think you should let her try." Kyle added, "I've seen nerves crack under fire. Hers won't." Against every instinct, Richardson relented. Minutes later, Emily lay prone atop a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke curled upward, and faint flashes of sniper fire lit the horizon. She steadied the rifle, her heartbeat sinking with her breath. The words of her father returned. "Breathe. Trust the shot." The first round thundered out. Across the valley, an enemy sniper dropped instantly. The patrol stirred, finding momentary relief. Another shot, another sniper silenced. She worked with calm precision, faster than the men beside her, until the last hostile fell. The valley went quiet, except for the hum of the wind. The trapped soldiers began moving again, alive because of her. When she rose, the camp was waiting. Soldiers who had once mocked her now stood at attention, their respect unspoken but undeniable. Richardson's face was unreadable as he stepped forward. For the first time, he didn't laugh. He saluted. Emily didn't smile. She simply lowered the rifle and turned toward the setting sun, carrying her father's legacy in silence. From that day forward, whispers carried her name through the ranks. She was no longer the little girl they had mocked. She was known as the ghost of the rifle range, a legend born in the shadow of giants like Chris Kyle and Marcus Luttrell, proof that courage could live in the unlikeliest of hearts. The mist rolled over the hills of Scotland, clinging low to the ground like a silent veil. At the edge of a remote training camp, soldiers from the British SAS and American Navy SEALs gathered for joint exercises. Their boots pounded against the dirt, rifles slung across their backs, voices sharp and commanding. But among them walked someone who clearly did not belong. A teenage girl in a plain jacket, her hair tied back, her eyes quiet but unwavering. Her name was Hannah Blake. She hadn't come by choice. Her uncle, Colonel James Blake of the SAS, had brought her along because her mother was ill and there was nowhere else for her to go. He told her to keep her head down, stay out of the way, and above all, never draw attention. But attention was unavoidable when the camp noticed her. The American colonel spotted her immediately, standing in the shadow of the barracks. His voice cut through the air, loud enough to halt conversations around him. "Where's this little girl's mom?" His words were laced with mockery, the smirk on his face igniting laughter from the ranks. "This is a war camp, not a playground." Hannah kept her gaze low, though her fists clenched at her sides. She had heard those tones before, voices that dismissed her, underestimating her strength. Her uncle stiffened beside her but said nothing. The colonel's laughter grew, feeding the amusement of the soldiers. What no one knew, not even her uncle, was that Hannah had been practicing in secret for years. While others played with dolls, she had spent nights in the countryside, lying prone in fields with an old hunting rifle, teaching herself patience and precision. Her uncle's stories of combat, his tales of impossible shots by men like Billy Dixon and Adelbert Waldron, had carved themselves into her mind. She didn't just admire them, she wanted to walk the same path. As the training continued, Hannah stood silently at the range, watching. The crack of rifles echoed across the valley, targets clattering in the distance. At last, unable to contain her curiosity, she stepped closer. The colonel noticed her again and sneered. "What's wrong, girl? Want to turn with the big toys?" The laughter rose once more. Without waiting for permission, she nodded. "Yes." The colonel chuckled darkly and motioned to the weapon rack. "Fine, then. Let's see the daycare champion try." He picked up the heaviest weapon there, the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle, and shoved it toward her, certain the recoil would send her sprawling. Hannah's uncle started to object, but she had already stepped forward, gripping the massive rifle. She adjusted it with practiced hands, her body moving with the kind of precision that startled those who were watching closely. Dropping low, she rested the weapon against her shoulder and fixed her eye on the scope. The colonel's grin widened. "Target at 1,500 meters. She won't even see it." A hush fell. Hannah inhaled slowly, letting the world shrink into silence. Her heartbeat slowed, her breath steadied, and the memory of her uncle's words echoed. A true marksman isn't fighting the distance. She's fighting herself. The rifle cracked, a thunderous roar that rolled across the valley. A second later, the steel target at 1,500 meters rang out with a clean hit, dead center. Soldiers froze, Their jaws dropped, their eyes wide. The colonel's grin shattered, replaced by disbelief. One shot was luck. But when she adjusted and fired again, another perfect hit, the silence grew heavy. Whispers spread through the camp, names uttered in awe. Chris Kyle, Craig Harrison, Rob Furlong, men who had redefined what a rifle could do. And now this girl had joined their conversation. The colonel's pride burned hot. "Not impressed," he snapped. "Anyone can hit 2 shots. Let's see her keep up with the best." He called forward 2 legends who had come to observe the training. Craig Harrison, the British sniper who once held the world record for the longest confirmed kill, and Rob Furlong, the Canadian who had broken it, before him. The soldiers straightened, their respect for these men undeniable. If Hannah faltered, her humiliation would be absolute. Targets were set at impossible distances. Winds shifted unpredictably, and the light began to fade. One by one, the snipers fired, their shots striking with near perfection. When Hannah's turn came, every eye was on her. The weight of their judgment pressed heavily, but she pushed it away. The first shot landed clean, the second followed. By the 5th, even Harrison and Furlong exchanged uneasy glances. Her calm never wavered, her shots steady as if the rifle itself were an extension of her heartbeat. Before the colonel could cut the test short, chaos erupted. A runner dashed into camp, breathless. "Convoy ambushed! East Valley! They're pinned down by machine guns and enemy snipers. No aerial support." The camp erupted into motion. Soldiers scrambled, radios blaring, orders flying. But the valley was treacherous, and sending in men blind could mean certain death. Precision fire was the only option. But conditions were brutal. "I can do it," Hannah said. The colonel whirled around, furious. "Out of the question!" Her uncle stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Let her try. If she fails, we lose nothing. If she succeeds..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Against every fiber of his pride, the colonel relented. Minutes later, Hannah was lying on the ridge, the Barrett steady in her hands. Smoke curled in the valley below, flashes of gunfire marking enemy positions. Her heart raced, but she forced it down, pulling the world into silence once more. Her first shot tore through the enemy machine gun nest, silencing it instantly. The convoy below stirred, seizing the moment to reposition. Her second shot dropped, a hidden sniper on the ridge. Her third cut through another and another, each round clearing the valley like a storm sweeping the sky. The soldiers beside her, men who had doubted her, laughed at her, watched in stunned silence. Every shot was flawless. Every trigger pull meant survival for the men below. When the last hostile fell, the valley went quiet except for the distant hum of engines as the convoy escaped. The soldiers in camp erupted into cheers, relief flooding. Through them. Hannah lowered the rifle, her arms trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what she had just done. She had saved lives. She had proven herself in the crucible of fire. The colonel approached, his face stripped of arrogance. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, slowly, he removed his cap and bowed his head in respect. The same soldiers, who had laughed, now stood tall, their silence a tribute more powerful than applause. From that day forward, Hannah Blake's name traveled across camps and barracks. She was no longer the little girl mocked in front of the soldiers. She was remembered alongside legends like Chris Kyle, Craig Harrison, and Rob Furlong. They called her the girl who broke every record. And though she never sought fame, the story of that day carried like a whisper through the ranks of warriors across the world. Proof that sometimes courage is born where it is least expected, and legends rise from the unlikeliest of places.